So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to let the room populate. And while we are getting started, I'm going to have a few opening comments before our official takeover. I'd like to begin tonight's program by acknowledging and paying respect to the fact that we in Philadelphia are located on the lands of the Lenni Lenape people. I also want to stop and take a moment to recognize the hardship that some members of our communities might be experiencing right now due to yesterday's storms and the extreme flooding that we have here in Philadelphia and across the region. My name is Layla Cartier. I am the Executive Director of Craft Now Philadelphia, and I am thrilled to share this First Friday preview with you virtually. Since we have started doing these over the last year, it has evolved into a casual industry night where those working in the field can convene, since many will eventually be able to return to the galleries. And we can also expand beyond Old City with our presenters, as well as the audiences that we're able to reach. I'm going to take care of some quick housekeeping. I want to let you know that we have enabled the closed captioning feature, or at least I meant to, and if I did not, I will be doing so. So you should be able to click on that feature at the bottom, but I might not have enabled that in time. Apologies. I will check on that after this introduction. And additionally, we are going to ask that all of you keep yourselves on mute for now to avoid background noise while the presenters are talking. Any questions or comments you have can be placed in the chat so we can filter through them and share them at the end of the discussion. And at the very end of the entire program, we're going to invite you all to unmute yourselves to participate in a little Q&A and conversation and close out the program. So with that, I hope I have given everyone a chance to settle in so that we can begin, and we're going to jump right to it. This September, Zindzi, Harley, and Heather Moqtaderi of Past Present Projects are taking over this program. This is our very First Friday preview takeover, which we hoped would invigorate and add new voices to the program. And I really, truly could not be more excited to sit back and enjoy the lineup they have curated for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
All right, are we seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having us, Layla. This is a tremendous opportunity. We've been enjoying your First Friday preview programming ever since before we were back in person, and I treasure the opportunity to be here with you as many of our exhibitions transition back into in-person experiences, and we can share some of the work that we've been doing as well as the work that we have been appreciating. So I'm here with my friend and curatorial colleague, Zindzi Harley. And Zindzi, I'll ask that you start us off by introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with everyone, and so thankful for everyone who's able to tune in tonight. I've been working with Heather for about the past 2 years now with Past Present Projects. I am an alum of the University of the Arts with a master's in museum studies. Currently working as the manager of community programs with Ars Nova Workshop and project curator with Past Present Projects.
I'm so glad that you're here and settled in Philadelphia, and it's wonderful to work with you. So hi everybody, I'm Heather Moqtaderi, and I am the founder of Past Present Projects. The work of our organization is to organize site-specific exhibitions of contemporary art in historic spaces. We have previously worked with the Woodlands in West Philadelphia, where we organized Graffiti and Ornament, which was curated by Elizabeth Estner and featured artists Roberto Lugo and Leo Tukoski. We also organized Victoriana Reimagined at the Ebenezer Maxwell Mansion in the Germantown section of Philadelphia, which I curated. And that exhibition included Melanie Belenker, Jacinta Clark, and Talia Green. Zindzi and I co-curated Distant Memory with artists Colin Pisano and Emily Karras Duncan. That exhibition took place in the early days of COVID and social distancing, hence the title Distant Memory. So we installed the exhibition in a South Philadelphia Fabric Row storefront so that it could be enjoyed by the public in times of social distancing. And now I'm so excited to announce that we have a space in the Bach building, which is at 1901 South 9th Street. Come see us in space number 506. The plan is to regularly have featured artists. And the artist on view now is Colin Pisano, whose work from Distant Memory, which is behind me and on the screen, an incredible trompe-l'oeil carved wooden quilt sculpture, as well as it's not a real radiator behind me, but it's a trompe-l'oeil wooden radiator is on view, as well as some new wall graphic illustrations that are here on view. So visit us online at pastpresentprojects.org. Follow us at Past Present Projects, and I'd love to have you here at the gallery. But I'm excited to say that Zindzi is going to kick off our round of presentations this evening with our current project, which is a collaboration with the artists Black Quantum Futurism.
Thanks so much, Heather. I guess we can get started and we'll kick it off with our first exhibition that we recently have just opened up at Hatfield House, which is Ancestors Returning Again, this time only to themselves. This is a collaborative exhibition between Past Present Projects and the Fairmount Park Conservancy that opened at Hatfield House on August 14th. The show will be running until September 19th. And here you can see an image of the house and the beautiful land that it's on. And yeah, this is where we started the exhibition, and we'll take you guys through the house and some of the different rooms that you'll be experiencing if you can come to visit it. So the exhibition is a site-responsive installation by Black Quantum Futurism that features their film debut, A Right No History. The Hatfield House is a historic house and community cultural hub that's located at the intersection of North 33rd Street and West Girard Avenue in East Fairmount Park. And ever since 2017, with the support and guidance from a lot of community partners, the Conservancy has begun to transform Hatfield House into a community-centered space for art, culture, and history. So Black Quantum Futurism's film Right No History is presented as a video and sound installation inside Hatfield House ground floor rooms. Right No History features found and archival footage of the Temporal Disruptors, members of an ancient secret society of Black scientists, healers, writers, and practitioners transporting a quantum time capsule between future, past, and present. The Hatfield House in Fairmount Park is transformed into a gallery of artifacts and found objects from the secret society. So here you'll be able to see a short trailer from Right No History. The film is presented in a time cycles on monitors and via surround sound speakers throughout the house. Visitors will walk through the house to experience the film in segments at their leisure, as well as other items on display in the exhibition. The film is directed and produced by Black Quantum Futurism, which includes Rashida Phillips and Kame Awe, and the filmmaker Bom Sweeney. So as you can see, this film is amazing, and that only gives you a small glimpse into it. But we also have another aspect of this exhibition, which is the ancestors returning again, this time only to themselves, zine. The exhibition is multifaceted and it engages visitors not only through the historic site of Hatfield House, but films, artifacts, and visual art, as well as the exhibition zine, which you can see one of the pages from. The zine seeks to help visitors contextualize each room in the exhibition, as well as provide some background information on the film Right No History. The zine was designed in-house by Past Present Projects project curator Zindzi Harley. So I had a lot of fun designing this zine, and I think it's definitely a very key part of the exhibition that allows visitors to really get a little bit more information on each of the spaces in the house that they're experiencing. So in these next couple of slides, you can see some of the visual works that Black Quantum Futurism has created. And a lot of them reference back to objects, these temporal technologies that allow communication between the past, present, and future. So you can see things like clocks and different tools that are used to tell time, objects like the quantum time capsule that you're seeing here, which we'll play a little video of it because it does move and function. This is a temporal technology that was created for oppressed Black and Brown people that are isolated in local, progressive, linear, fatalistic time ghettos that otherwise deny access to temporal dimensions. There are many barriers that have oppressed Black and Brown peoples, and time has been one of those. So through these quantum time capsules, we can send messages and objects at any point in the past or future, which allows us to communicate with both ancestors and future generations. It really eludes this linear space-time and continuum that causes these troubles with the notions of past, present, future, history, and allows us to progress by including stories and objects that are usually rendered invisible to the white gaze. As a way of communicating with the past and connecting with the future, these time capsules can help us unsettle any questions that have expired presumptions or understandings of time. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite artifacts from the exhibition. Moving on to the Redeemer Room, which you can see another page from the zine that expresses more information surrounding this space in the house. A lot of historical collage is presented in this room. The collage provides an illumination of the temporal disruptor's secret society. It speaks to the power of oral and visual traditions, the memory of color, a collage of future visions. It is these visions that give us the agency to better understand our past and to better identify the groundwork that has been nurturing our foundations here in the present. The collage is accompanied by a family photo album called The Familiar. The photo album is an archive of feelings, a collection of emotive folk experiences. So as you can see, there's so many aspects of this exhibition that are spanning between the past, present, and future, and allowing us to connect with our ancestors and further our knowledge to continue to sustain ourselves as we move towards a more sustainable future for Black bodies. Here you can see more of these artifacts. Some of the visual works, including the collage. And then we're moving on to the time capsule study and Kindred Temporal Library. Here you can see another image from the zine that includes some more background information. In the time capsule study, time emerges from timeless degrees of freedom, creating conditions by which temporal disruptors can collapse all eras, instances, and possibilities for Blackness across time and into the present, borrowing freely from any temporal dimension. Through a study of the unknown and development of Black Afro-diasporan ritual, temporalities, and codes. Temporal disruptors activate portals, shadows, and black holes as sites of rememory, future memory, and temporal liberation. The Kindred Temporal Library is an archive of books, films, tarot, and oracle decks, and other materials holding the themes of community, time, temporality, prophecy, speculation, foresight, the past, and Black women as futures. The library is named for Octavia Butler's novel Kindred and first appeared at BQF's Time Camp in 2017. So here you can see some more images from this room. This is a view that kind of lets you see some of the movie that's playing in the background, as well as some of the window pane poems that are on all of the windows in that room, and are very beautiful. These poems were actually, created by Kavage and have some very powerful words that kind of speak a little bit more to the themes in the exhibition. And you can see some of these in the zine as well. Here you can see some of the graphic wallpaper from the room that includes equations and different mathematical iconography, as well as some tribal patterns and prints that kind of reference that African diaspora and ritual. So moving on to transmissions from a quantum time capsule. This sound sculpture is like a sonic record of a quantum time capsule that holds Black cultural artifacts excavated from Black sites of memory, such as potter's fields, housing projects, subfloor pits in the cabins of the Black enslaved, and Black monuments that are almost never legible in the white gaze, unless it's being used for capital exploitation. Quantum time capsules are conceived as temporal technologies for temporally oppressed Black and Brown people, isolated in local, progressive, linear, fatalistic time ghettos that deny access to temporal dimensions outside of the narrow time band of the digitally mediated present. So in this room, you can see this mirrored box, which actually has sound coming from it. And this entire room also has a soundscape to it. There's also more artifacts that sit on the mantle. And you can see how some of these artifacts are deeply resonate with the Black community, as here you can see up close a little bit better some of the Afro picks that are used to pick out Black hair. And these technologies are things that we've used over time that have allowed us to continue to support ourselves, to engage with one another, and things that we can carry over from the past into the present and the future, hopefully.
Thank you so much for sharing that virtual tour, Zindzi. I should mention that the artists, Kame Ayewa and Rashida Phillips, would have loved to have been here, but they just left for different overseas travel engagements. So they sent their best. So as Zindzi mentioned, the Black Quantum Futurism show is up at Hatfield House through September 19th. And if on the weekend of September 11th and 12th, you have the opportunity to see this exhibition that Zindzi just told you about, and then walk down the street and see the exhibition of our next speaker, who I am delighted to introduce, Jack Larimore. Jack is renowned for his work in sculpture, as well as furniture making and being an educator at the University of the Arts. Jack's sculptural work has been shown at a who's who of galleries, including Snyderman Gallery, the Center for Art in Wood, where his work is part of the permanent collection, Wexler Gallery, Schmidt-Dean Gallery, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, where his work is also part of the collection, the Noyes Museum, the Wharton Eschrick Museum, and just too many other venues to mention. Jack Larimore's latest body of work is featured in an upcoming solo exhibition at Atelier Art Gallery, with an opening reception next Friday, September 10th. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jack. And if I may, I'm going to bring us to Sycamore Story, which is an incredible piece. And I'm wondering if you could start by talking about it.
I can. Am I unmuted properly?
You're great.
I think, first off, I'd like to say, thanks for putting this together, you guys. And I think it's a really interesting combination of presentations here. And I'm excited about all the little connections that I'm hearing already. And so I think that says a lot for what you're doing, A, and B, says a lot about our time and where artists' minds are. So I really appreciate that. And I think you can tell by the previous slide, the sort of the scale of this piece. The trunk of the tree is nearly 5 feet around. And as is true with all of this work, I'm not quite sure yet what this is about. But it started with the tree. And this tree grew across the street from our farm, magnificent sycamore tree, just the sycamore of sycamores. One day I heard chainsaws going, and I saw that they were taking this tree down, and I was totally dismayed until I found out that it had rotted in the center, and it had to come down. It would have fallen down. So I talked them into bringing me a piece of that trunk. And so I've been living with this trunk for a few years, actually. In the process of hollowing it out, it's really just a shell, and it's sort of remarkable. But in the process of hollowing it out, I spent a lot of time inside this trunk, and it became sort of a moving experience when I had the presence of mind to actually take it in, to sort of live within this tree and try and connect with that. And so, it sent me on a journey thinking about, the life of this tree. And as someone who works in wood and who's always been sort of fascinated with and inspired by trees, it's nice to actually work with a piece of a tree in this way, and thinking about the life of the tree, both its history and its future, and to be sort of a part of that. So the vessel here, I'm not sure whether the vessel is coming or going out of this tree, but it has to do with the passage of the tree's physical life, perhaps the passage of the tree's spiritual life. And so in this way, I really was able to sort of share somehow in this tree's story. And so, I'm interested in these stories. It's sort of why I do the work, is to get engaged in these stories and see where they take me, really. So, and inside the vessel are then small clippings from a sycamore sapling. So there's a parental relationship here between the tree and the contents of the vessel, that I'm also not sure about, but I think is pretty vivid.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And this, I can speak from experience. I'm so honored to have seen this and experienced it in person. It's really such a moving piece to experience in person. Can we move on to this? And so I don't have a picture of the inside, and I'm not sure if you didn't send me one because it's a special surprise that you don't want to give away, but
yes, that's why I didn't send it. Yeah, exactly.
Because
I forgot to. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, the lead into this piece is, and now for something completely different. And I would say the curious thing about this exhibition is, and it often happens to me, much to the chagrin of gallery owners, my exhibitions tend to look like group shows. And it really is about the fact that all of these are individual ideas, and I'm very committed not to try and fit an idea into my language. I'm very interested in trying to find a language that speaks about the idea. And so it's a little bit of a nightmare in terms of being a maker because you know, as soon as you get good at something, you're not going to use it again, probably. But it's for me, it's a wonderful way to work and a great experience. I love the places that these pieces take me, and this piece it took me for quite a ride. It's about and not unlike the previous presentation, it's a lot about memory and time and dreams and the relationship, sort of exploring the relationship between dreams and memory. And I had a lot of fun doing this, and as a part of the process, I started actually journaling dreams, which I never do. I mean, I hardly ever remember them, but I started journaling dreams, and part of the surface of this piece is I've written out those journal dreams, and so and when you're writing down a dream and you're sort of putting pen to paper, right? It's like, at what point am I starting to fabricate the dream as a memory? What point are memories sort of fabricated from dreams? I think it's really fascinating. I know it's true. I don't know the science of it and don't really care, but I think it's sort of an exciting thing to sort of consider. And so this piece has to do with that. And so the interior is a very dark interior that has a sort of an infinity quality to it. And it's a very personal moment when you stick your head in this. And so it was, it's still a really interesting phenomena for me. But I hope you guys get to see it. It's better than me talking about it.
I'm glad you didn't give it away in a picture. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, now for something else completely different. I'll have to say this is a room in the gallery not by itself, but sort of separated from the other pieces. And it's actually true that Helen and I, after this installed, Helen and I walked into this room and we began whispering to each other inexplicably. There's nobody there. We weren't. There's no secrets to be had. But that was a sort of automatic response that we sort of laughed at. But I was happy for it. I was happy that I could actually have that kind of a realization and experience. And this is another piece that I would say I don't really fully understand. It's unlike anything I've ever done. I'm excited to spend some time with it. It began thinking about basically the repression of women, the female, and I realized somewhere in this process that, in fact, that this is not about that. I think this has become more of a shrine and something that a conversation about resilience and ascension more than repression. So it's more of a celebration, really, and it's a very curious piece to have a white dress. Yeah, I'm still looking at it. I don't know how much else to say about it. And then the seven pieces around it are witnesses, and another interesting sort of phenomena that it's engaging. In terms of thinking about all of us as witnesses and the commonality of witnessing and the way in which witnessing is loving. So, but strange objects, no question. But they really oversee the centerpiece in a sort of curious way.
That's a great anecdote about you and Helen whispering to each other, and it does have this very mysterious, reverential atmosphere. And I feel like the room both feels both very still and very alive. So we're at 10 minutes for you, Jack, unfortunately. So I'm going to just move through your images. And everyone follow Jack's Instagram, which is fabulous and clever. And come to the opening next Friday. And on Jack's website, which we'll put in the chat, you can look at all of the dates where there are gallery hours that are free and open to the public, as well as selected programs. So thank you so much for sharing your vision with us today, Jack.
Sure, thank you.
So next up is Matt Tomesco presenting about Wexler Gallery and their latest exhibition, Embodied Abstraction.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Did I unmute? Okay, great. Yeah, so we currently have an exhibition up at Wexler Gallery right now called Embodied Abstraction. It's on view until September 24th. And it's 6 artists who are really different from one another, but the core of the show, what ties it all together, is that they are conveying meaning through the language of abstraction. What they're saying is very personal. Some of it's very emotionally powerful. Some of it is a social critique or is bearing witness in some way. And they utilize different formal techniques and different processes, but it all interrelates and it's all very visually related to one another in a very coherent way. So I encourage you to come out and see. We're going to be open tomorrow night for First Friday, so hopefully you can come out. And the 6 artists are Angel Abreu, Henry Bermudez, Gerald A. Brown, Destiny Palmer, Isaac Scott, and Malcolm Mabutu Smith. So the next slide actually is a little installation shot of the show. And you can see sort of the variety of the type of work and the different levels of abstraction that are in the show. If you look in the far right corner, there's Henry Bermudez. You can see this sort of portrait of the woman, with the really colorful hair. It's just sort of like one step removed from realism, but it's put through these different filters and these different choices. And then right in front of the camera in the bottom right corner is Gerald A. Brown's sculptures. And these are highly abstract and incredibly subjective and personal, more material and process-based work. And then if you go to the next slide, this is Destiny Palmer, who I think really bridges the gap between the two extremes of Henry and Gerald, and her work is almost figurative, except without the figure. Like it's like figure painting, but it has all the shapes and all the same approaches, but it just ends up being something completely different. So, and then if we keep going through, we can take a look at a couple of the other artists. There's Isaac Scott, his installation, which he actually does photojournalism and ceramics at the same time. And then if we go to the next slide, Malcolm Mabutu Smith also sort of takes on ceramics and combines lots of different influences. And then the next slide, that's a closer look at Henry Bermudez's work as well. The Angel Abreu, that's his painting on the back wall, and that's the final artist in the show. And he probably more than a lot of the other artists have a purely abstract, pure form, non-objective of work, which actually in the next slide, if we go to, we can go through each artist individually. So starting with Angel Abreu, we have his work is, as I was saying, like very not objective, very like sort of, you know, subjective in the interpretation, but his approach is essentially a literary one in that he comes from Tim Rollins and KOS, which was a group of educator in the South Bronx who educated different students. He was one of those students and sort of grew up in the arts and being introduced to the art world. And they would read and talk and have discussions and work all of that into their work. And so this is him as an adult sort of, you know, taking the experience of reading and the subjective experience of internalizing these ideas and making paintings that, you know, make sense within the internal mechanisms of the mind. So the next slide. This is Henry Bermudez. He is from Venezuela, and he sort of was a young artist down there, cutting his teeth, learning a lot, teaching, absorbing a lot of different sort of cultures, and then eventually moved to the United States, sort of mid-career, and he sort of then had to adapt to like American culture and sort of ties in all these layers of American mythology and the culture sort of like of his upbringing and the all the differences between like these African diasporic cultures that he experienced firsthand through his upbringing and through his experiences in Philadelphia. And actually the piece on the right, I just think is so beautiful because a lot of his work sort of has this suspension of disbelief in it. It's like magical realism. And so the background is glitter, which is like a little cheesy to use. It's like kind of hard to imagine somebody doing that well, but you know, he has this like vine, this like tree that's sort of inspired by the Amazon rainforest, and then the glitter behind it, and it's just this insanely magical, beautiful thing. Like if you imagine standing in front of that tree and then having a night full of stars behind it, and it's all glitter. So I just think his work is so special and so beautiful. And we can go to the next slide. This is Gerald A. Brown. Her work, again, is very process-based and very much about the material. She uses clay itself as a metaphor, and develops these forms that are sort of supposed to be portraits, or she considers them to be portraits, but they're developed through touch. They're developed through, you know, just sort of the process, the incidental things that happen to them in the process of making. And it is sort of meant to mirror like the, you know, what makes a person and how their environment can influence them. And I just love that because I think that ceramics already just feels so human and has this great connection to the body. And she just really takes that to the next level. And she also does vinyl, which I think is great because she's a multimedia artist. So she works with signage and line drawing. I think it's fantastic. So we can go to the next slide. Destiny Palmer, her work again is like, feels like it's figure painting. It feels like it's abstraction. There's a lot of energy. It's bright, bold. She does a lot of collage too. So it's just like, what is painting? Like, you know, there's all these gestures that come from brushstrokes. There's gestures that come from cutting materials. There's patterns that come from materials, but then she replicates that in her painting. And there just seems to be a coherent narrative that runs through all of her work, and yet it's hard to say what it is. And I think that what that does to me is it's like she's saying something specific, and yet it's universal. Like everyone can relate to it in some way. We can go to the next slide. Isaac Scott is another multidisciplinary artist. He is focused on ceramics and in observation and trying to capture this sort of like daily experience of the world around him. And actually what is really interesting is during COVID, he couldn't have access to his studio. So he ended up, all he had was a camera. So he ended up sort of taking, you know, documenting the things happening around him in his neighborhood and his surroundings. And he ended up really documenting the Black Lives Matter movement and all of this sort of protests and happenings that were occurring last summer from the inside. He recognized that as this is an important story to tell from the inside. And then, his photos were actually widely celebrated, published in the New Yorker. He won a photojournalism award for it, and he was like brand new at it. Like it's something that he turned to during the pandemic. And then he brings all of that back to his ceramics and reinterprets it into like an abstract language. His approach, it looks very like he's marrying this like creative and destructive force together, but it's very beautiful too, which I think is really nice to see. And it's an optimistic look, I think, at all of this stuff that he's sort of like taking on. So we can go to the next artist. And this is the final artist in the show. So this is Malcolm Mabutu Smith. And he is really bringing together a lot of different disciplines. He's a pioneer in the ceramic world as far as like introducing non-traditional like cultural references to the craft history world, I think. And some of what he does is, it's kind of like this confluence of craft history, like these historical forms, referencing them verbatim, but then adding in, influences from graffiti, from improvisational jazz, and like collaging, like hip hop collage type thing, like postmodernism, just adopting things from like all different time periods and all different cultures and all different areas, and sort of putting them all together into really tight ceramics. His pieces are just flawlessly made. And I think that precision and that like flawlessness is an aspect of each one of those things: craft history, graffiti, hip hop, jazz, I think all of that stuff is very, very like highly formal. So I think his work speaks to all of those things. And then I think the next slide is it shows how he's presenting his work too, which, he has all these sort of traditional references and then all these other, references. And I just think the backsplashes are really interesting too. It just adds this whole other dimension to it. And again, it's like they're spray painted, but it's flat, so it's like the references, he's like, even when he's referencing the thing, he's not really doing it in a straightforward way. It's like you're able to pick up all the pieces and decipher it, but it's always a little, he's doing it in his way.
Thank you, Matt. This is such an impressive and compelling assemblage of artists. And as you know, technically very different, but all coming together through the language of abstraction, the language of the body. Oh, quickly, before we move on to Sarah Kavage, we're going to run through some images of a show that Zindzi had the brilliant idea to recommend because it's closing soon. And this is at PAFA, the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, Taking Space, Contemporary Women and Artists and the Politics of Scale. And if you don't mind, because we're moving through quickly, I think that I will just move through these images so that we have time. But as I do, Zindzi, is there anything you wanted to say about this show?
Oh, muted. Okay, so yeah, this exhibition is definitely an amazing one that I wanted to include. It's curated by Dr. Brittany Webb and Jody Throckmorton at PAFA. It's going to be closing September 19th, so we really would like to encourage folks to get in there and check it out. Here you can see a couple images that Heather will flip through. This exhibition just examines multiple approaches of women artists for whom space is a critical feature of their work, whether they take space on a wall, the real estate of a room, through sculpture and installation, engaging serality as a spatial visual practice, cast a wide legacy in art history, or claim the space of their body. This exhibition celebrates PAFA's permanent collection and features many recent additions to the collection. It invites a conversation across generations, geographies, and media, as well as around political impulses of these female artists. And there's many ways in which we can look at this artwork, but we use space as an organizing feature to highlight the ways that these artists claim intellectual and physical space. And this exhibition should make you question how do size, geography, and repetition become political gestures in a lot of these artists' work. So it's definitely one to see. And the exhibition's beautiful, so we would love folks to go check it out before it closes.
All right, thanks for adding that in, Zindzi. I want to suggest to Layla that there be a Craft Now shuttle bus to take us to all of these, because I'm embarrassed to say I've been meaning to get to that for months, and thank you for pushing us to get to it, Zindzi. So I'm going to unshare my screen so that our next and final speaker, Sarah Kavage, can share their screen. And while Sarah does so, I will provide an introduction. So our final presenter is Sarah Kavage, who is the artist who led an expansive series of environmental art projects called Water Spirit, which are part of the larger regional program called Lenapehoking-Watershed. Water Spirit includes an array of site-responsive temporary sculpture installations, collaborations with other artists, and thoughtful events that are rooted, literally and figuratively, into the specific landscapes of our watershed region in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Sarah Kavage is a Seattle-based artist, urban planner, researcher, observer, and writer. Sarah is Zooming from Seattle, but she will be returning to Philadelphia soon for a series of public events. So Sarah, thank you so very much for joining us and sharing Water Spirit today.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you to Zindzi and Layla for having me as part of this program. It's just such an honor to be in a dialogue with all these amazing people and all this really incredible work. So happy to be here. Oh, sorry. There we go. And I'm going to start off with something slightly dorky with this map, but I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Lenapehoking, since that is in our name. And Layla, thank you for doing the land acknowledgement earlier. Part of the reason when we were considering a name for this project, part of the reason why we wanted to have Lenapehoking as part of the name is, of course, to sort of include a land acknowledgement with the name and have that as a way to sort of educate folks. And we found it interesting that the geography of Lenapehoking, which is what this map shows, it's kind of that lighter yellow area, is roughly contiguous to the geography of the Delaware River watershed. And part of our task with this project was to sort of activate the watershed in people's imagination. And Lenapehoking as a geographic entity, as well as the watershed, are both these geographic concepts that sort of go beyond colonial boundaries and colonial practices of drawing lines on a map. And we enjoyed that, both as a metaphor and, literally, sort of talking about the landscape that we're in. And so this sort of whirlwind tour that I'm going to give you all today is roughly chronological. I've been working on this project for about 3 years now, over 3 years, and spent starting in between March and August in the area doing all these builds. It amounts to about 15 different installations that go from Wilmington to the Poconos. And so as we go through, I'm also going to touch on a few different opportunities to experience the work this fall through all these different activations, community partnerships, artist residencies, and so on. So this is the first installation in the spring. One of the most exciting things about this project was the opportunity to really get to explore all these materials that are relevant to the area. This one being willow. These are all works that sort of change. They're part of the landscape. They grow. What's around them grows. This is actually, of course, inspired by willow basketry and willow's use as a weaving material. It's actually sort of immersively built into this willow patch. This is another piece with willow, also inspired. A lot of what I'm doing in terms of material is really looking at material traditions, ways that different practices have, different craft and building practices can be sort of put into public scale. And these are using bentwood furniture traditions and also living furniture traditions. These benches actually grow. There's one on either side of the creek down in West Philly and Cobbs Creek. This is a straw bale garden, and straw bale garden is a food growing technique. This is in Trenton. And this is a community garden. This is right after we planted the straw bale garden. This is like 350 straw bales laid out in this sort of formation. And here's what it looked like just a few months later, sort of at the end of the July, when it's all grown up and sort of decayed outside, well outside the boundaries of the straw bales and taking over the garden. A lot of this work is really designed to decay, change, grow with the seasons. And that's been sort of part of the adventure, is just watching the nature have its way with the work. This is Tacony Creek in North Philly. These are grapevines that we harvested. If you've been up to Tacony Creek, you'll see that a lot of trees are sort of shrouded in grapevines. And enjoy sort of thinking about, what stories the plants are sort of telling and what stories they might tell under different circumstances. And, that this was sort of trying to re-envision a different relationship between the grapevines and the trees, and kind of a kinder, maybe kinder, gentler relationship. This is the first of a number of works using Phragmites. Phragmites is an invasive reed that grows prolifically around the lower parts of the watershed. And the story that the Phragmites is telling, and all the invasive species, I think is really about the movement of plants and people, and how we talk about that movement and how we sort of treat that movement of plants and people, both in a context of invasive species and ecology, but also in a context of immigration and migration, and how we can create, this work is really thinking about creating a space where every being that's present in a place is valued in some way. Phragmites is kind of an amazing plant. It gets really demonized, but it has many traditional uses. These benches, and a lot of the work that I'm going to show is based on traditional roof thatching techniques from Europe. This is another piece along the Cooper River in Camden, Pennsauken. And we, on Friday, September 24th, we'll have a performance by Laka Laka Flaka, which is the collective that puts on the annual Day of the Dead celebration in Philly. This is at John Hines in Southwest Philly. This is just fun. These Hines is a bird migration corridor. It's home to so much bird life, and these benches were just an opportunity to really, and many of the benches that you see, I don't see it as just benches. This is a way to allow people to step into a different space. It's an imaginative space, and really trying to create something that is fun and engaging and enchanting, and allows people to sort of experience nature in a different way that's sort of beyond the standard, I guess, guilt-ridden and scientific approach that we take a lot of times in standard educational and scientific efforts here. This is down in Wilmington and will be the site of a couple really awesome performances. There will be a bomba group and an Aztec dance group, both performing in this space on September 24th as part of a monarch migration celebration that they're doing down there. And of course, you know, you all know that monarchs, right, they start up here and they end up down in Mexico. So this is a just really beautiful way to connect those two geographies through this, you know, cultural celebration. This structure is called a mudif, and this is a piece that I've created in partnership with Yarub Alabaidi, who's an Iraqi social practice artist in Philly. This is a traditional Iraqi structure. It's a structure for sort of celebration and welcoming in Iraqi culture. And Yarub's social practice work has to do with creating healing between veterans of the Iraq War and Iraqi refugees. And so that is, we're intentionally sort of using this space as this healing space for those two groups. So we'll be doing an event on September 11th. This is going to be really special. Space is limited and you have to register. But if you are a veteran of Iraq, or if you happen to be an Iraqi refugee, or if you know folks from these two groups, or if you have a particular interest, please come. I don't know, I can't say enough. I don't have enough time to say all the beautiful things about this project. This work is a devotional structure that I've been building in partnership with I have a small crew of Camden-based interns, and it's been sort of, this is a mobile structure that's kind of been popping up around Camden and just living as a space for folks to participate and think about their relationship to nature, about their relationship to others, especially sort of during COVID. And it'll be making, I believe its final stop on September 19th at RCA Pier, which is sort of the Camden waterfront from 1 to 4. And we'll be sort of doing a whole artist showcase with vendors and performers and so on and so forth. So. This is work that's just braided directly into the grass, working in different meadows around town. We're so excited to be able to work at Bartram's Garden. This is, I made this work in collaboration with some really, really wonderful folks. Asia Kolobati, Jisun Chong, Brenda Howell, Mary Muse, and Aya Pearson McCoy. We did a ton out there. This work is all about sort of uncovering and celebrating the hidden labor, mostly feminine labor in our society. And because we're in Southwest Philly, and because Bartram's has been supporting quite a bit of research into the hidden Black history of Bartram's Garden, this work was especially powerful and especially just moving to be able to do this here and with this group of people.
Sarah, we have a question in the chat. Are you able to share information about the Laka Laka Flaka performance? Like a link or?
You know, a lot of what I'm telling you, and I apologize, details, we just nailed down the date for that last night, so I don't know any other details. So all I can say is check the website. There is an events section on the website that will have those details, and just, you know, if it's not there yet, I hate to say it, just check back.
I'm going to paste the events back in the chat for everyone to have and follow, because I'm also very interested in the September 11th healing ceremony.
Yeah, and that's a lot of this stuff goes up on, we do have a project Instagram for the healing ceremony. The Schuylkill Center's Instagram has been really, they've been great about posting. They post a lot about the Moody project, and they've got quite a bit online too. So you can find that there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I don't know if you want to continue with your presentation and close out the program for us.
Indeed. I'll continue. This is another Day of the Dead celebration will be happening at this installation. This is the old Audubon House in Mill Grove up in Audubon, PA. This is another braided grass work that is up on this beautiful hillside in Lehigh Gap, sort of above the Lehigh River. We'll be doing some sort of sunset bomba performance. We're doing a lot of sort of October related and Day of the Dead, leading up to Day of the Dead events coming up. But that'll be in early October. We have not been able to settle on a date yet, sorry. And then last, this is up in the Poconos. This is taking a bunch of, so this, in the Poconos, there was several years ago a incredible windstorm that brought down a bunch of trees and really sort of devastated a lot of the area and people were without power for a couple of weeks and so on. And these are the kind of extreme weather events, right, that we are all experiencing now, that you all are sitting in today, right? And so with this, taking some of this down timber and creating this work with it, just hoping to sort of try to capture some of that dislocated feeling that, we're all sort of having when the landscape that you thought you knew is no longer that landscape. So I guess I'll leave it there.
Definitely an incredible way to end, considering what you just said about what we are going through here after the incredible storms yesterday. And I'd also like to agree with what Jack Larimore said earlier about this incredible group of curators and artists that have come together tonight, despite the historic flooding and weather events of the last 24 hours, to share the important work that you're all doing and to spend the evening talking with us. So thank you so much for being here on Zoom with Craft Now. You can follow us on social media, Craft Now PHL, and please follow our website, craftnowphila.org, for more events as they get posted, just like Sarah was saying. And with that, I invite you to unmute yourself, say hello, ask any questions, and we'll just spend a couple more minutes together before we say goodbye.
Did any of the recent sculptures we were looking at get washed away from the Schuylkill or other water?
I sure hope not. I mean, they've done well so far. There are a couple I'm a little worried about, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay. I hope not. They were beautiful.
I actually go running at John Hines all the time, and now I know exactly who the artist is of all those pieces that I see every time. Amazing.
And so Sarah, is there a publication going to be put together of these, or is this going to be sort of packaged in a way that lives on a bit? I mean, it's a nice group of things, and there's a lot I think there's probably a lot of text that might connect these dots really interestingly.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be spending the fall and winter doing a lot of sort of writing and processing, because I have not had time to even think about, where it lives after this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole story around each one of them in a way. It's really sort of interesting. We got a little taste, but I mean, the last slide with the you know, with the rivers of twigs and the vessels. I saw them as being the logs sort of traveling. I mean, just so provocative.
Thank you very much.
And Jack, you should mention that there will be a catalog associated with your exhibition illustrated with an essay by Sarah Archer and I believe an essay by Nava Milliken. So really first rate writing there, really exciting.
I look forward to also seeing Sarah's pieces with the performances, what those images,
Yeah,
what that documentation will look like with the interaction.
right.
So tomorrow, First Friday, Wexler Gallery. September 11th, we have 2 things to go and see, Hatfield House and the performance at you said Schuylkill.
Schuylkill Center, yes.
Yeah.
And that one, it's less of a performance. I think it's sort of participatory, interactive, thoughtful, meditative type of thing. Self-work. If you need any more of that this year.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Unless there are any more questions, we can say goodbye, go get some dinner, and unwind for the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you all
you.
so much.
Good night.